Well, everyone, it's time for us to go ahead and do a comparison between the iPhone 14 Pro that just came out and the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE and see which specific phone is the better one for you. Now, I will probably tell you the iPhone 14 Pro definitely has some cool features, and I'm really happy Apple, kind of made a different styling of phone this year. But the S21 FE, that's kind of supposed to be more of like a budget tier phone that you can actually buy on Amazon for less than $350 right now. It's actually insane what type of features you're able to get on an S21 FE over the iPhone 14 Pro. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the front of both these devices, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE came out a little bit earlier this year, and on the front, it has a 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED display. Now, it's a 1080p panel, and it's not a bad, it's a really, really good panel for its price tag. It's not a curved panel, so it's a flat display, just like the 14 Pro. Now, it has a hole punch display, so it is a very, very thin, small little hole that's on the front. It's also a 120 hertz panel as well. So just those things right there, the fingerprint sensor in the display, hole punch display, 120 hertz, those are some flagship features. So that in and of itself was something that really shocked me about the Galaxy S21 FE. Now, on the front of the iPhone 14 Pro, we have a little bit of a smaller 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED panel. Now, funny enough, they kind of call the feature set of this specific panel the Dynamic Island. So, Dynamic AMOLED, Dynamic Island, I think Apple kind of did some funny stuff there. But this phone still has a 120 Hz panel, very slim bezel on it too. But if we're comparing hole punches, it's quite obvious that Apple still, is kind of years and years and light years behind Samsung and many other phone manufacturers when it comes down to the hole punch technology. Now, I do understand they're making things like the Dynamic Island notification thing or whatever, but still, I don't think they need to make it this big of a notch thing, because it does cut into content quite a bit. Now, on the bottom, we have a USB-C port on the S21 FE. We have a Lightning port on the iPhone 14 Pro. Now, some big things to kind of keep in mind. Now, I still prefer USB-C over the Lightning ports, but, it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. Now, on the back, we have probably the biggest advantages for the iPhone in this case. The S21 FE has a frosted plastic back on that phone. So it's definitely not the best looking back of all time. It doesn't look bad, but you can definitely tell it doesn't feel as premium as something like the iPhone 14 Pro. The 14 Pro feels still like it's going to feel like one of the most expensive phones for years and years to come. So with the FE lineup, this is something that Samsung probably will have to kind of, improve on a little bit. With the iPhone 14 Pro, this phone has a frosted glass back. So that is something that is really cool. For you, having that type of capability of pretty much just having that frosted glass back right there is awesome. Over the frosted plastic back, it's probably one of those things to keep in mind. But weirdly enough, it doesn't end there. The S21 FE also has reverse wireless charging on that phone, which that in and of itself is wild. Having reverse wireless charging on a phone that's not even like the flagship is so cool. I love that. On iPhones, we still don't have this. It's been on a lot of Samsungs since the S10 from 2019, and Apple still hasn't given us this feature. It's a very, very useful feature. I wish Apple brought it over. They still haven't. I feel like they're probably going to do it at some point. They have MagSafe, which is cool. It connects things a little bit better, but I wish they went ahead and gave us this capability to, wirelessly charge our phones, in my opinion. So, in terms of the outside, that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the camera setups, I will tell you, you're getting a much bigger camera on the iPhone 14 Pro than on the S21 FE, so definitely keep that in mind. With the FE, you're getting a 12-megapixel wide-angle lens, an 8-megapixel telephoto lens, then a 12-megapixel ultra-wide sensor. On the 14 Pro, you're getting a 48-megapixel wide-angle lens, 12-megapixel telephoto lens, and then a 12-megapixel ultra-wide sensor too. And on the front, you're getting a 32-megapixel front-facing camera on the FE. The 14 Pro has a 12-megapixel front camera. Now, we can do 4K at 60 on the back and front of both these phones, and this is what I will tell you. I think the quality of the 14 Pro camera is probably the better one. I think if you just are talking sheer quality, not only in the stock camera app, but also in things like Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, those types of applications, you are probably going to be getting a better experience overall on the iPhone 14 Pro than on the S21 FE. But the biggest advantage, in my opinion, of the FE is the amount of features you have built in inside of that camera. It is actually pretty insane how many features Samsung was able to pack into that specific phone. And in my opinion, this is probably the thing that's going to separate this phone against a lot of other, competitors it has. When you have a phone like the FE that has that type of capability, it's actually really awesome because there's so many features built within that specific camera. So I would say the 14 Pro's camera is probably the better one when it comes down to it, but the FE is still doing a tremendous job, and I'm a humongous fan of that specific phone as well in terms of that camera setup. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now, hitting on the actual longevity of both these phones, this is also a little bit of a different type of thing. Because the FE had the same chipset as the S21 from last year, it's tough to say, exactly how long the FE is going to last, compared to the 14 Pro. If anything, we know that the S21 is probably going to last like another 3 years, maybe 2 to 3 years. So the FE is probably going to last just as long. So still, you're going to be getting a few years out of the S21 FE. The 14 Pro, I will say it's kind of tough to call this one too. I mean, I'm probably going to say it's going to last maybe another 5-6 years, but it could last longer, it could last less. But this phone is just getting started. So I definitely will say the iPhone 14 Pro is going to last longer than the FE. Now on top of that, in terms of performance, the FE has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset inside of it with 6 gigs of RAM on the base model, and it does go up to 8 gigabytes of RAM, where the iPhone 14 Pro has that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside of it with 6 gigabytes of RAM on all the models that phone had. Now, like I mentioned before, when you have something like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, this is still a very good performing phone. It's not going to be that slow, and it's only aided with that 120Hz panel. Now, from everything that I tested with this phone, it was a beast. It did everything I wanted it to. If I wanted to load up certain applications, if I wanted to do anything, it was a great performing phone, which I really liked. Was it perfect? No, I mean, sometimes the things I could notice the most are like things like it glitching. If I were to close out of an app, sometimes it would be like a glitchy experience when I close out of it, which is honestly kind of sad because I feel like that's the one thing Samsung needs to kind of improve on. But otherwise, any applications I was using, any games I was playing, anything like that, I was getting a really good experience on my Galaxy S21 FE. On my iPhone 14 Pro, this is probably one of the better performing phones available right now. I mean, this phone is very smooth. It performs extremely well. If I'm doing heavy intensive gaming, if I'm swiping between applications, the whole entire UI is very, very smooth on that type of phone. That is the thing that I look for, is everyday usability. I'm not playing games every single day on my phone, but the one thing that I notice is how smooth the iPhones are, and one thing that I notice on the Galaxies is sometimes how glitchy they can be. Again, it's not a deal breaker for me personally, but it is just one of those things you kind of have to mention. So, in my opinion, that kind of covers it up there as well. Now, battery life wise, I would have probably said the S21 FE's battery life is better, but because we do have the ability of kind of limiting the refresh rate on that phone down to quite a low amount, you can actually get pretty good battery life from the 14 Pro on standby time. So I will probably tell you, in my opinion, that the Galaxy S21 FE is probably a better value per dollar when you consider some of the features you are getting with that phone. It's actually pretty insane how great of a phone you're getting at that price tag. But if we're not even thinking about price tag, then I would probably consider the Galaxy S21 FE to not be as good of a phone as the iPhone 14 Pro. That doesn't mean the iPhone 14 Pro is like worth $1,000. I think the 13 Pro is probably a better deal in my opinion, but I would probably tell you the 14 Pro is the better phone over the S21 FE in my opinion. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.